to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where the day can soften at the edges and you can drift toward rest as gently as the tide slides along the shore. Tonight's story will follow a quiet seaside bicycle path where the ocean air is cool, the dunes are hushed, and a slow ride becomes a peaceful journey into sleep. Settle in now just as you are. Let your shoulders loosen as if a warm blanket has been placed there. Let your jaw unclench, your tongue resting easily in your mouth. If your hands are holding any tightness, allow your fingers to curl and uncurl in a slow, unhurried way until they find a natural stillness. Take a soft breath in, as though you're sipping air through a straw, gentle and steady, and let it out with a sigh that doesn't need to be heard. Again, breathe in, feeling the coolness in your nose, the quiet expansion in your chest, and exhale, letting the weight of the day slide away, bit by bit, like sand slipping through open fingers. You don't have to do anything right now. You don't have to solve, plan, or remember. You can simply listen and allow the images to float by like clouds. If your mind wanders, that's all right. Let it wander and let it return. The way a seabird loops wide and then glides back to the same stretch of sky. Imagine in the distance a coastline under a calm evening. The air tastes faintly of salt and clean wind. Somewhere a path follows the curve of the sea, smooth and welcoming, as if it has been waiting for you. With each breath, you feel yourself being carried closer to that quiet place where the world is slow and safe, and every moment is gentle. And now, without effort, without needing to hold the story too tightly, you can let the viewpoint shift, like turning your head slightly toward a softer light, until you're simply watching comfortably as it unfolds, curved with patience, tracing the natural curved with patience, tracing the natural shapes of dunes and inlets, moving around clusters of beach grass the way water moves around stones. The path began near a sleepy row of cottages with pale shutters and porches that faced the ocean. In the evening, the cottages seemed to breathe out warmth. Soft light pooled in their windows. Curtains lifted and fell with the breeze. Wind chimes whispered in small, silvery notes, as delicate as the sound of spoons stirring tea. A wooden sign stood at the start of the path, weathered and smooth from years of sun and salt. A gull perched on top, calm and watchful, as if it were a quiet guardian of this simple route. Beyond the sign, the path stretched forward in a ribbon of worn boards and packed earth, leading toward the low shimmer of water. The sea was close enough that its voice could be heard at all times, sometimes louder, sometimes softer, always there like a lullaby that never ended. Waves folded themselves onto the shore with a rhythm that felt older than any clock. Foam drifted in and out, drawing and erasing tiny patterns on the sand. A patient net beneath the surface. Here a patient net beneath the surface. Here and there pale shells lay half buried, and smooth stones sat, as if thoughtfully arranged. On this particular evening, the sky carried a gentle gradient, from soft pearl near the horizon to deeper blue above. The air was cool, not cold, refreshing in the way fresh sheets feel when you slip into bed. A faint mist hovered over the water, turning distant shapes into softened silhouettes. A cyclist appeared at the entrance to the path, moving slowly, not to reach a destination quickly, but to enjoy the feeling of gliding forward. The bicycle was an old, well-loved one with a wicker basket on the front and a small brass bell on the handlebar. The bell's tone was clear but tender, like a tiny invitation rather than a demand. The cyclist's name, if anyone had asked, would have been Mara. She lived not far away in a cottage whose kitchen window faced a small garden of herbs that loved the sea air. Mara had an unhurried way about her, as if she had learned that time could be generous when treated gently. She wore a soft scarf around her neck, and her coat was light enough for easy movement. Her hair was tucked away beneath a cap, and her eyes held the kind of calm you see in people who spend time watching tides and sunsets. Mara began to pedal, and the bicycle rolled forward with a faint, comforting hum. The tires made a quiet sound against the path, steady and soothing. The motion itself seemed to smooth the air around her, as if she were gliding through the evening rather than pushing through it. She passed the last cottage and entered the stretch where dunes rose on one side and the sea opened wide on the other. A low wooden railing kept the path safe, not like a barrier, but like a gentle guide. The boards of the railing were smooth, rounded by weather, and they held a faint scent of sun-warmed wood. As Mara rode, she noticed the small details that made the path feel alive. A cluster of sea lavender near the edge, holding tiny blossoms like purple clouds. A crab making its careful sideways journey over damp sand below. A feather caught in the grass, pale and soft, trembling in the breeze. The ocean, for its part, seemed to be listening as much as speaking. The waves were calm, the surface carrying a mild, steady swell. Farther out, the water turned to a deeper shade, and the horizon line was blurred by mist, as though the world had been painted with a wet brush. Were simple, worn, and inviting. People were simple, worn, and inviting. People sometimes came here with books, or cups of warm tea, or simply their thoughts. Tonight, the platform was empty, and it felt like a quiet room with the door left open. Mara slowed and coasted onto the platform. She placed one foot on the ground and rested, looking out across the water. The air carried the clean scent of salt and the faint sweetness of dune flowers. She could taste the evening on her lips, like cool mineral water. In the distance, a lighthouse stood on a rocky point. Its shape was softened by the mist, but its light was steady, turning slowly, casting a pale sweep across the sea. Each time the beam passed, it seemed to say gently, "There, there, all is well." Mara listened, letting the sound of the waves move through her like breath. The sea had a way of gathering scattered thoughts and smoothing them out, pressing them into something quiet. The wind made a soft song as it moved over the grass and through the railing slats. When she felt ready, she lifted her foot, turned the bicycle back onto the path, and began again. The path carried her onward, curving slightly, following the shoreline like a slow, thoughtful line drawn by a patient hand. As she rode, the mist grew a little thicker and the world became even softer. The sound of the ocean felt closer, more enveloping, like being wrapped in a blanket of sound. The dunes on her left became gentle shapes rather than distinct mounds, and the sea on her right was a wide, shimmering presence. Mara rang her small bell, not for anyone in particular, just a light chime that fit the quiet. The tone floated forward, and for a moment it seemed to blend with the sea's rhythm, as if the ocean had answered in its own deep way. Ahead, a string of lanterns appeared, hung from low posts along the path. They were not bright, and they did not glare. Their light was warm and calm, like honey. Each lantern swayed slightly with the wind, and their soft glow made small circles on the ground. These lanterns had been placed there years ago by townspeople who loved the evening rides and wanted the path to feel welcoming even as darkness approached. The lanterns were simple, but they had a comforting quality, like a familiar melody. Mara pedaled beneath them, and the light moved gently across her hands, her coat, the wicker basket. The path ahead remained clear, not sharply defined, but comfortably visible, enough to guide her without demanding her attention. The bicycle path entered a stretch where the dunes opened into a small coastal meadow. Here the air felt slightly warmer, sheltered from the direct wind. The grasses were shorter, and small wildflowers dotted the ground like quiet stars. Somewhere in the meadow, a hidden stream ran toward the sea, and its faint trickle added another layer to the evening's music. Mara slowed again. She had learned that the best moments of a ride were often found by easing her pace and letting the world reveal itself. With smooth stones that had been arranged with smooth stones that had been arranged with care. No sign demanded attention. No loud marker called out. It was simply there, like an option offered in silence. Mara felt a gentle curiosity, the kind that is calm rather than restless. She guided her bicycle down the side path, rolling slowly as the ground changed from firm boards to packed sand. The beach opened wide, pale in the dim light. The tide was low, leaving stretches of wet sand that reflected the sky like a mirror. Shallow pools remained between rocks, catching bits of starlight and lantern glow. Mara leaned her bicycle against a driftwood log and walked closer to the water. The sand beneath her boots was cool and slightly springy, holding her steps with quiet acceptance. She came to a tide pool and crouched beside it. In the pool, the world was miniature and bright. Tiny sea anemones clung to rock, their delicate shapes like small flowers underwater. A starfish rested nearby, still and patient. A little fish darted and paused, as if learning the rhythm of calm. Mara watched without trying to name everything. She simply let her eyes rest on the gentle movements, on the way water shifted and caught light. The tide pool felt like a secret room tucked inside the larger world. Behind her, the sea breathed in and out. Above, the sky deepened. The first stars were visible now, soft points rather than sharp sparks glowing through the mist. The lighthouse beam continued its slow sweep, steady as a heartbeat. Mara stood and walked along the waterline for a little while. She let the waves come near her boots and slip away again. She listened to the soft, shushing sound, like pages turning in a book that never ended. When she returned to her bicycle, she noticed something in the wicker basket. A small piece of sea glass, pale and smooth, as if it had been placed there gently. Mara hadn't put it there earlier, and she hadn't seen it before she walked to the tide pool. She picked it up and turned it in her fingers. The glass caught the lantern light and held it for a moment, making a soft glow of its own. It was the color of early morning sky, faint and calming. Mara smiled, not with surprise, but with quiet appreciation. The Seaside had a way of offering small gifts, things that felt like reminders rather than possessions. She placed the sea glass back into the basket as if it belonged there, as if it had simply found its way home. She wheeled the bicycle back up the side path, the sand yielding and supporting each step. When she returned to the main bicycle path, the lantern seemed slightly brighter, or perhaps her eyes had adjusted to their warmth. The path stretched on, inviting her forward. As she rode again, the mist thinned, and the world became a touch clearer. The dunes rose softly, their edges outlined by moonlight that now slid across the sand. The sea shimmered, reflecting a pale strip of light where the moon hovered behind a veil of cloud. Mara's breath was steady. Her body moved with the bicycle's gentle rhythm. Each pedal stroke felt like a soft, rocking motion, the kind that lulls a child to sleep. The path beneath her was smooth and familiar, and the quiet around her was deep and welcoming. She passed a small wooden bridge that crossed the hidden stream. The bridge had a simple railing, and as the bicycle rolled over it, the boards made a faint, comforting thrum. Below, water whispered over stones, carrying its own unhurried song toward the sea. Beyond the bridge, the path became slightly elevated, running along a low bluff. From here, the view opened wider. The sea spread out like a dark, glossy blanket, stitched with silver where the moonlight touched it. Far offshore, a distant boat light blinked softly, steady and slow. Mara felt as though she were riding along the edge of a dream. Everything had a softened quality, as if the world had decided to speak in whispers rather than words. A cluster of small pines grew along this section of the bluff, their needles making a gentle sound in the breeze. The scent of pine mixed with the ocean air, creating a clean, calming blend. Mara breathed it in and felt her thoughts become even quieter. She came to another rest point, a small shelter built of weathered wood with a slanted roof and a bench inside. It was there for cyclists caught in sudden drizzle, or for anyone who wanted to sit and listen to the sea. The shelter faced the water, open to the view. Mara guided her bicycle into the shelter and sat down on the bench. She rested her hands on her lap and let her eyes soften. The lighthouse beams swept. The distant boat light blinked, and the waves folded themselves onto shore. Inside the shelter, the sound of the sea was slightly amplified, as if the wooden walls gathered it and held it gently. The shelter felt like a small nest along the coastline. Mara reached into her basket and took out a thermos. She poured a little tea into a cup. Steam rose, carrying a faint scent of chamomile. She sipped slowly, letting warmth spread through her chest. The tea tasted simple, mild, and comforting. As she sat, she noticed something else. A small notebook tucked into the corner of the shelter, resting beside a pencil tied with string. The notebook looked as though it belonged here, part of the shelter, like the bench or the roof. Mara opened the notebook and found that its pages were filled with short notes from travelers, cyclists, walkers, people who had come here to breathe and listen. The handwriting varied, some neat, some looping, some barely more than a scrawl. The messages were simple, gentle, and full of quiet gratitude. Some wrote about sunsets, some wrote about storms that had passed, some wrote about finding peace in the sound of waves. No one asked for anything. No one demanded attention. It was a collection of soft thoughts, left like seashells along a path. Mara turned a page and found a blank space. She held the pencil for a moment, feeling its smoothness, and then wrote a few words, slowly and calmly. She wrote about the lanterns, about the tide pool, about the sea glass that had appeared like a whispering gift. She wrote about how the path felt like a kind companion. Then she placed the notebook back where she had found it, as if returning a gentle secret to its home. She finished her tea, feeling the warmth settle, and stood again. Outside the shelter, the night had deepened, but it was not dark in a heavy way. It was dark in a soft way, like velvet. The moonlight remained gentle, and the lanterns along the path were still glowing farther back, like small resting stars. Mara stepped onto her bicycle and began to ride once more. The path now sloped downward, returning toward the dunes and the cottages. The ride felt even easier now, as if the bicycle knew the way home without needing any effort from her. The wind had quieted, and the air felt still. In that stillness, the sound of the sea became even more soothing. The waves no longer seemed like separate sounds. They blended into a continuous hush, like a deep breath that never ended. Mara's eyes half-lidded for a moment, not from sleep, but from peace. She kept her gaze gentle and forward, letting the lantern glow guide her. She felt her body relax, her shoulders loose, her hands light on the handlebars. Its head, ears alert, and watched Mara, its head, ears alert, and watched Mara pass without fear. Its eyes reflected a faint glimmer of lantern light, and then it stepped back into the grass, disappearing as quietly as it had appeared. Farther along, a fox crossed the path at a leisurely pace, its tail a soft brush behind it. It paused briefly to look toward the sea, then continued into the dunes, as if it too were following some quiet nighttime route. The seaside path seemed to belong to all gentle travelers, human and animal alike. It was a corridor of calm, a shared space where everything moved slowly and respectfully. Mara reached the section where the dunes rose higher, creating sheltered pockets of quiet. The lanterns continued, though they were spaced farther apart now. Each one felt like a slow blink in the night, a reassuring pulse of warmth. Near one lantern, Mara noticed a small stone circle at the base of the post. Within it lay a few shells and pieces of sea glass arranged with simple care. It looked like someone had made a tiny offering to the path, a little altar of found beauty. Mara slowed and reached into her basket. She took out the pale sea glass that had appeared earlier. Holding it for a moment, she felt its cool smoothness. She didn't feel as though she owned it. It felt more like a message, a quiet token of the seaside's kindness. She placed the sea glass gently into the stone circle, nestling it among the shells. It caught the lantern light and glowed softly, as if it were happy to rest there. Then Mara continued on, feeling lighter in a way that had nothing to do with speed. The path carried her forward, and the cottages were not far now. Their warm windows glimmered like distant hearths. As she approached the town, the scent of baking bread drifted faintly from somewhere, a late batch cooling near an open window. The smell was comforting, familiar, and it made the world feel safe and homey. Mara passed a small bakery with its lights dimmed, then a little shop with a painted sign that creaked gently in the breeze. The streets were quiet. No one rushed. The town seemed to be sleeping, or nearly. At the entrance to the bicycle path, the weathered wooden sign still stood. The gull was gone now, perhaps tucked somewhere warm among the rocks. The path behind Mara was a ribbon of calm stretching along the shore, quietly holding the night. Mara rode the last short stretch to her cottage. She parked her bicycle beside the porch and carried the basket inside. Her home was warm, simple, and softly lit. A small lamp glowed into the corner, and a knitted blanket rested on the back of a chair. She hung her coat and scarf, moving without hurry. In the kitchen, she filled a bowl with water for the small plants on her windowsill. She moved gently, as though she were trying not to disturb the peace she had gathered on the path. In her bedroom, the window was cracked, slightly open, letting in the ocean air. The sound of waves was quieter here, but still present, soft, distant, steady. Mara changed into comfortable clothes and pulled back the covers. She sat on the edge of the bed and took a slow breath. The ride had settled something inside her, like snowflakes drifting down to the bottom of a clear pond, leaving the water still. She slipped beneath the covers and let her body sink into the mattress. Her head found the pillow, and she turned toward the window, toward the faint sea sound. Outside, the lighthouse continued its slow turning, though she could not see it from here. The lanterns along the bicycle path continued to glow, though dimmer now, their light cradling the quiet route beside the sea. Mara's eyes grew heavy. Thoughts came less often, and when they did, they drifted through her mind like small boats in fog, appearing, floating, fading. The sea breathed. The dunes rested. The path waited. And in that stillness, the world seemed to whisper the same message again and again, not in words, but in rhythm. You are safe. You can let go. You can sleep. The cottage remained warm. The sheets were soft. The air was cool and clean. The night held everything gently, like hands cupped around a flame. Mara's breathing slowed. Her shoulders softened. Her jaw relaxed. The ocean's hush became a lullaby that required nothing from her. It simply existed, steady and kind. The lanterns along the seaside bicycle path swayed slightly in the breeze, their glow calm and faithful. The tide pools waited for morning light. The shells and sea glass rested in their quiet places. Everything was unhurried. Everything was peaceful. And now, as the story itself begins to fade like mist, dissolving in gentle dawn, you can let your own body grow heavy and calm. Let your thoughts loosen. Let the sound of the sea, imagined or remembered, carry you. Your breathing can be slow. Your eyelids can be soft. Your mind can be quiet. The path is there, curving beside the shore, always ready to guide any wandering thought back toward rest. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.